What's up, everybody? It's your boy Brandon Blakeney, aka Brandon Lee TV, bringing you another banger. Today, we're looking at how Pete Carroll and Geno Smith saved the franchise of the Seattle Seahawks, but also finessed the Denver Broncos. Let's get into it.
You are now locked into the Live with Brandon Blakeney podcast. Here is your host, Brandon Blakeney.
Before we look at the Seahawks' resurgence, we got to look at what happened between them and Russell Wilson and why he got traded in the first place.
Then says people at the heart of the Wilson-Seahawks breakup, including those close to the quarterback and members of Seattle's front office, coaching staff, and players, described to ESPN how a dysfunctional situation built toward its eventual breaking point. Wilson wanted out, believing coach Pete Carroll and the organization were holding him back, and with their own misgivings about how his game was aging. The Seahawks lost faith in Wilson, just as he had lost faith in them. So according to Doug Baldwin said, from my vantage point, the divorce was inevitable and many years in the making. The reasons are multiple, but ultimately I think it comes down to a difference in pursuit.
The Seattle Seahawks traded the Denver Broncos Russell Wilson in a 2022 fourth-round draft pick. In return, the Broncos sent a 2022 first-round pick, a 2022 second-round pick, and 2022 fifth-round pick. There was also 2 picks in 2023, a first-round pick and a second-round pick in next year's draft as well. They also threw in tight end Noah Fant, DN Shelby Harris, and QB Drew Lock. Haven't heard much from him, obviously, but hey, the kid got swag. Initially, the feeling was that the Broncos ran off on the Seahawks, got their franchise quarterback.
We got Russell Wilson? We got Russ! Our franchise QB! He's our only franchise QB since Peyton Manning! And Russell Wilson is going to drag us out of the darkness and into the light! We just got our next QB, folks!
Before he even played a game for his new team, the Broncos announced they were signing him to a 5-year, $245 million contract extension with $165 million guaranteed. So he is now under contract for a total of 7 years, worth $296 million in total.
And people are saying that Seattle won that won that trade. Russell Wilson, if you can get him on your team, you get him on your team. What was he like as a teammate? What was he like as a human? How would you describe Russell Wilson? Because from the outside looking in, it's like, oh, this guy seems to portray the perfect person all the time. Hey, clear eyes, full hearts, here we go. His mic'd ups are like out of a movie. Greg, they're out of a movie almost. I'm like, I've never met somebody like this. You got to be teammates with him. You know him very well. When I saw you outside of Radio Row, I met Russell Wilson for the first time. He gave you a big hug, a lot of love there. What do you think Denver's getting, and how do you feel about the trade as a whole?
Yeah, I think the notion that Seattle won that trade is a bit interesting. I think
you could say it.
Yeah, I don't necessarily agree with that. I think, yeah, they got a couple players in the trade. Really, the 2 first-rounders are what moves the needle. But to give away 2 first-rounders that, you hope that those first-rounders aren't that high, right? Into the future, trading picks is all based on how good do you think you're going to be, right? So to trade a first-round pick this year, you can't obviously control. But for the following years, if you have Russell Wilson on your team, you're hoping you're not picking until the later third at the minimum, but you're hoping you're a playoff team and you're picking in the late 20s, early, 30, 31, whatever.
Well, in that draft, the Seattle Seahawks addressed some key holes that was holding their roster back. They found their franchise left tackle in Charles Cross out of Mississippi State. These guys really waited till Russ left to adjust the offensive line. That's crazy. Petty, but we're going to move on. They also drafted their franchise running back in Kenneth K9 Walker, who was in the running for Rookie of the Year on the offensive side. Then they got Richard Sherman 2.0 and Tyreek Woodland. Sauce Gardner, deservingly so, gets a lot of praise, but Woolen was tied for a league-leading 6 interceptions. On top of all that, Russ had the worst season of his career. The Broncos looked pathetic. His coach, Nathaniel Hackett, got fired. Baker Mayfield also put a 50 ball on him. It's tough. And really all he had to say was,
Broncos country, let's ride.
Media and the fans and some of his own teammates were brutal. They did not hold back on that man.
His contract has not started yet. It's a contract extension. He still had years to go. It's why it's kind of gone viral this year of the dead cap money that is associated with this deal moving forward. I mean,
It is an all-time disastrous move.
You can't just put anybody in any scheme and think, oh, well, I'm just going to make him fit my scheme. Like, you got to, like, it's almost like they didn't even watch tape of him in Seattle.
2022 season for Russell Wilson and the Denver Broncos has been an absolute nightmare. Right now, the Broncos are 4-11. Wilson is having by far the worst season of his career, and the trade with Seattle, as well as his 7-year, $296 million contract, both might go down as the worst of all time. Before this season, Wilson's lowest rating was 2016 in Seattle when it was a 92.6. This season in Denver, it's an 82.6. Russ also has the lowest completion percentage of his career at 60.1%. And as of right now, with only 2 games left in the season, Wilson has only thrown 12 touchdown passes. The least amount he's thrown in the season prior to this year was 2014 when he threw 20.
The Seahawks got an unexpected top 5 pick in this loaded 2023 draft, and with the 5th pick, they have a lot of options they can play with. Endless opportunity. The most pleasant surprise, though, was somebody that had been on the roster for the last 3 years. Backup quarterback Geno Smith. Taking it back a little bit to dive into Geno Smith. Came into the league with high expectations out of West Virginia with the New York Jets. If you know, you know. After 4 dreadful years, pretty much like every other Jets quarterback since Mark Sanchez, they parted ways with Smith, their once hopeful franchise quarterback, and he bounced around for a couple years in the league from the Giants to the Chargers, eventually landing some stability with Seattle. It seemed like we had heard the last of Geno being relevant in the league, especially as a starting quarterback. But all that time, he was sharpening his craft, learning the ins and outs of the league, and eventually the game slowed down for him, and everything finally clicked. He had the best season of his NFL career by far, led the NFL in completion percentage, and broke Russell Wilson's franchise single-season passing yards record in year 1 of starting. Smith was one of the major feel-good stories of the NFL all year last season, and for a team everyone thought was dead in the water, he led them back to the playoffs, and this week, he was rewarded for that. Smith signed a new contract, 3 years for $105 million. $75 million is in salary, another $30 million is available for incentives. Betting on himself again, and hell, why not? It worked the first time. Coach Pete Carroll believes that they can win a Super Bowl with Geno Smith. And you know what? I think he can too. Maybe the Seahawks saw something we didn't. Maybe they got rid of damaged goods. I don't know. Maybe Russ can bounce back with Sean Payton in Broncos country. Maybe he's the answer. Y'all remember how Drew Brees looked before Sean Payton? I'm just saying, no disrespect. But for now, it seems like the Seahawks won that trade by a landslide. And thus, 2 guys saved a franchise that was looking to tank and probably go into full rebuild mode. And instead, they reloaded. If y'all want to see more stories like this, holler at me in the comments. Let me know who y'all want to see me portray next, talk about next, rap about, you know what I'm saying? And let me know what you guys think of this one in the comments as well. For all the latest and the greatest, make sure to hit that subscribe button for all the latest. It's your boy Brandon Blakeney, aka Brandon Lee TV. You dig?